starting a new class, Marriage and Family, and we are going to have to get through a lot of stuff because, as I said, Janie and I were going to try to put videos on, and we did not get the videos on, and so I'm going to try to cover. I'm going to try to cover what we would have covered in 2 weeks. Now, whether I'll make that or not, I'll make a good stab at it. So, that being said, it won't be as in depth, and yet you're reading your book anyway because we're going over a lot of stuff in the book, and it's just going to help you. So we just got a long way to go here. So let's get started. Lord, we love you. We thank you so much for your blessing in our lives and for working in our hearts, and I thank you for these men and women who are coming out to hear your word and to be taught and to be trained and to sharpen their skills so that they can be more adept not only in living life but also in helping others live life. So I ask you to bless each one of these men and women tonight with your presence. I pray for your anointing, Lord, that you would speak through my lips and think through my mind, and that you would help us to make progress so that we can be effective in your kingdom. Bless our time together. We thank you for it. We praise you for it. We honor you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so this is Marriage and Family, and before I even go into the syllabus and start the teaching, I do want to say that I have a conviction. I thought of this as I was just praying. I have a conviction that the problem with the too many churches and too many pastors today is that if we're not careful, we consider teaching like this more practical than spiritual. And in my opinion, it's as spiritual, if not more spiritual, than what we tend to think we're supposed to do in a church, which is to preach sermons on Jesus. And what I mean by that is, yes, that is spiritual to preach sermons on Jesus, but these kind of classes can help us learn how to grow, help us learn how to live productive lives, help us learn how to live the abundant life, help us learn how to pastor and lead people in a way that will help them live abundant lives. Because I think the problem, if we're not careful, is we have the concept that things just about heaven and about Jesus are spiritual. Hey, he said, I've come to give you life and life more abundantly. And there's a lot of people that are saved that are not living an abundant life. And this kind of stuff will help you live an abundant life. Which is why in the last number of years, my wife and I have spent a lot of midweek services teaching series on personalities, series on conflict management, series on things like this, because the problem with most churches is they don't know how to manage conflict, so they fight. And so we need to have these types of classes. Now, every time, I realize that there are times when I have these types of series in church, and some people stay away. Why do they stay away? Because they think it's not spiritual. But also, if they're not careful, their family's falling apart. You see. Or if they're involved in ministry, their ministry's falling apart because the people can't get along with each other. So I'm just telling you that this is vital to both life and ministry. And so when when we started teaching some of these things on midweek services, while some people stay away, they become the most popular and the largest attended classes because that's where we live, and we want to learn how to do it better. Okay, Alex, would you just pass those out? I'm going to go over the syllabus right quick on marriage and family, and as you can see at the top, my wife and I are both the instructors in this. We usually teach this together, and she would be here with us if she were here today. She comes back Wednesday, as I said, so next week she'll be here, I'm sure. And just let me preface her coming by saying I'm right. She's wrong. No, I'm just joking. Because we look at it from different points of view, you know. We come at it from different points of view, and so you'll enjoy that. Okay, course description. It's an introductory study of the marriage relationship, focusing on understanding yourself, your potential mate, and how to build a lasting relationship. The course studies men, women, individual personalities, the love languages, and how to relate to one another in a meaningful, fulfilling manner. It's a requirement that meets both the Generation School of Ministry core curriculum, as well as credentialing requirements for the Assemblies of God Certificate of Ministry. And upon successful completion of this course, individuals will be able to, number one, study the 5 love languages, identify your love languages as well as those of others. Number 2, distinguish between the falling in love experience and the real love commitment of a lifetime in marriage. Have you figured out yet there's a difference? That falling in love thing, it's tough, okay? But it's also tough to have a real love commitment. Somebody asked my wife one time, we will have been married 47 years in May. And a few years ago, we were teaching together, and one of the students raised her hand and said, "How did you make it 45 years or whatever it was?" And my wife said, "One day at a time." And that's the key. That's the key. Okay. Number 3, identify your personality type and that of your spouse or your potential spouse. Number 4, know the strengths and weaknesses of each personality type. Number 5, know yourself in order to prepare for marriage and healthy relationships. Number 6, know what to look for in a mate. Number 7, identify healthy and unhealthy patterns of lifestyle and communication. Number 8, respond correctly to the internal differences between male and female. Number 9, know what the Bible teaches on all the above. The texts are Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, How to Express Heartfelt Commitment to Your Mate, and Florence Littauer's book, Personality Plus for Couples. Now, there's a lot of Personality Plus books out there written by her. There's Personality Plus for couples, Personality Plus for parents. There's a number of them. We're using the one for couples in this class. Course requirements, course attendance and participation. You need to be here. Number 2 is required reading. You're going to read both books, Personality Plus for Couples and the 5 Love Languages. Memorization. The student's going to be required to memorize 3 portions of Scripture from either the King James Version, the New King James Version, or the NIV. The first portion is Ephesians 4:29 through 32. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good for the use of edifying. Our kids had to learn that when they were kids, and our children. And I'd walk in the house someday, and I'd hear them saying it because Mom was telling them. What does that scripture say? Hebrews 10:24. Hebrews 10:24 basically says that we are to provoke one another to love and good works. And then 1 Corinthians 13:4 through 8, which is the love passage. These assigned portions will be written out in class on the due date. Then there's a movie assignment. The student will be required to watch a movie assigned by the instructor and answer a question sheet pertaining to the movie. I'll let my wife go over that with you next week. Number 5, assignments. They must be done on a computer. Course format. Lectures, class discussion, presentations by the instructor will make up the class time. And you'll notice the class schedule. Even though we didn't meet last week, I put it in there for the sake of having it in the syllabus. So what I'm trying to do tonight, do you think I can make it, is get through this whole book. I can do it. It just depends upon how I do it. But you need to have read this book, okay? And so it's an easy read. I mean, once you get started, has anybody started it yet? Very interesting, isn't it? Yeah, very interesting. And most people just they start reading and they just start laughing or crying or whatever the case may be, a mixture sometimes. So in fact, every time my wife and do premarital counseling, these are the 2 books we require the people to read that we do premarital counseling with. Now, it said that your Ephesians passage was due today. Naturally, that's not going to happen. So I want you to have the Ephesians passage memorized by next week, as well as the Hebrews. And the Hebrews is only one verse. So it's, you're only talking about 5 verses or whatever. So you need to memorize it and from one of those translations. And then at the beginning of class, we'll just give you a moment to write it out from memory. Okay? And some people have a problem with that. You'll do okay. They're not huge. Okay, so I need you to do both of those for next week. And then next week we'll start lecturing on the Chapman book, 5 Love Languages. My wife may do a little bit on Personality Plus since I'm doing it so quick today, but we'll start on the Chapman book. There's no class on April the 6th due to Resurrection Sunday, the day before, and then we'll meet 2 weeks after that week. So we'll end up being here 4 weeks. Your 1 Corinthians passage is due April 13th. Your movie sheet will be due April 20th, as well as doing the final exam. Course grading, attendance and participation. You get 20% for just coming and acting like you're interested. Okay? The memorization's 20%. Your required reading's 20%. Supposed to read both books. Your movie assignment response is 15%. Your final exam is 25%. Any questions on what's required? My allergies are acting up. Any questions? Okay, it's pretty straightforward, and it's a fun class. It's a fun class, okay? So we're going to get right into it. So if you have your books, you'll do yourself a favor by going to it, because of the nature of how I've got to get through this book today. A lot of what I'm going to share is right in here. You could just highlight it if you wanted to. I'll try to keep you up to date on that. But I mean, not all of it. I'll be sharing things of my own that aren't in here. But because I have to go so quick, I'm going to use it as a guide tonight. I really want to. When we take 2 weeks to go over this book, my wife likes to read a number of the stories. I don't normally do that, but there are a couple I read, and I'm looking for one right now. I thought I had it right there. It must be right here. Okay, so it's on page 7 in the introduction. And I'm reading this for the sake of those of you that don't have it, because it just sort of starts out this concept. Bottom of page 7. For Fred and me, it was the grapes. We were sitting on a patio of a pink cottage in Bermuda. They had just gotten married when the waiter brought us a platter of fruit. I was excited with the service, and I began to talk to the grapes. I frequently talk to inanimate objects when no one else seems to be listening. What a cute little fellow you are, I said to a grape. I think I'll eat you first. As I was chatting sociably with the fruit, Fred turned towards me and asked, "Do you like grapes?" I thought that was an unnecessary question since I was happily eating the grapes. But submissive bride that I was, I smiled and answered, "Yes, I like grapes." "Then I assume you'd like to know how to eat them properly," he responded. I had no idea there was a proper way to eat grapes. But being polite, I asked, "How do you eat grapes properly?" I'd already learned that in Fred's family, everything had to be done politely and properly. "First, you take out your nail clippers," Fred instructed. I didn't have nail clippers, but Fred did. Fred has enough equipment in his pockets to outlast the cast of Survivor. He has a minimum of 9 pens with him, even on vacation. Red, blue, and black with fine tip, medium tip, and felt tip. And, whoops. Better turn down your phones. And not only, let's see, he has all these different tips. And not only does Fred have his pens, his nail clippers, his Swiss Army knife, and his keys, but they're always in the same pocket so he can produce them quickly with no fumbling. Then you clip a small cluster of grapes from the larger bunch, Fred explained as he took out his nail clipper, selected a little cluster of grapes, and snipped them off at the main stem. "Do they taste better that way?" I asked, confused by why this procedure was so important. Fred looked at me with pity. "It has nothing to do with the taste. It's to preserve the shape of the bunch." Now, I didn't know who cared about how the bunch looked, so I turned around to see if there were any grape judges hidden in the bushes. Seeing none, I asked, "What difference does it make?" I had not yet learned one does not question Fred's statements with expecting to receive a simplistic lesson appropriate for a first grader. "When you eat grapes the way you're doing," Fred said with an air of superiority, "you will notice that there are little ugly brown stems sticking up all over the bunch." I looked, and sure enough, there were ugly brown stems sticking up, but that didn't bother me, so I still didn't understand the problem. I hadn't yet learned that my opinion didn't matter if the situation bothered him. This grape-eating situation was just the first of many that revealed my new husband's penchant for attention to every detail. When we'd been married only 2 weeks, we went to a movie one night. On the way home, I had an idea. "Could we stop and get an ice cream cone?" I suggested. Without hesitation, Fred said no. Now, I wasn't used to this. "What do you mean, no?" I asked. "I mean, no, you can't have an ice cream cone." Fred's answer was simple enough, but it didn't really answer my question, so he continued. "You'll have to learn that every morning I make out my schedule for the day. From here on, if you wish to have ice cream at 11 at night, you tell me at 7 in the morning when I make out my schedule." "But I didn't know at 7 o'clock this morning that I'd want ice cream at 11 o'clock tonight," I protested. Unfortunately for me, my argument wasn't very persuasive for Fred. I didn't get my ice cream. Okay, welcome to married life. And for those of you that think, well, that seems a little bit extreme, that's life. Most people tend to marry somebody that's opposite of them. Now, this book also goes into marrying people that are the same, and that carries its own set of problems. Okay, but you're going to find as we go through here that the problem with most people is they do not. What they do is they tend to lash out at these things as though the person is being unrealistic, even though Fred was unrealistic, not realizing that he wasn't trying to be. That's just Fred. That's his personality. Now, before I get started on the personalities, let me say that until I understood this, I had all kinds of problems in the church. Because you tend to put people in positions, if you don't understand personalities, that are the wrong personality for the position. You don't put a melancholy at the front door. You put sanguines, happy-go-lucky people at the front door. If you put people in the wrong place, you will not only destroy them, they will leave. And they'll destroy other people in the process. Let me give you another illustration of how this works. This goes more into effect in a smaller church than it does a larger church. But in a smaller church, when you have events, you have to how do I want to say this? You have to structure them more precisely than in a large church, or they'll bomb. In other words, even a potluck. If you don't structure it to where, like the way my wife does, families whose last name begins with A through M, you bring a hot dish and somebody's main dish, and then names beginning with N through Z, you bring a salad and a dessert, or whatever the case. If not, everybody brings a salad one time. Now, in a big church, it's not so much that way, but you have to structure things more. That being said, sometimes in order to do that, you pass around a sign-up sheet. Remember, the sign-up sheets. After my wife and I learned this, we learned to read sign-up sheets correctly for the first time. Because there's some people that sign up for everything that comes along, even if they don't know what they're signing up for, and they never do it. Like if we need 8 people to do something, and we get the sign-up sheet, and there's 10 people who signed up, and 3 of them are the same ones that sign up for everything that never do anything, we know we need to get another person. you're saving yourself a lot of headache when you understand personalities. Now you say, well, you just need to train them not to sign up. Don't waste your time. Are you following me? You know, just, you know, and I'm going to talk about something about that a little later, okay? So, anyway, you know, the terminology that we use and she uses in this book and we use in our classes for the personalities is choleric, sanguine, melancholy, and phlegmatic. Okay, those are the terms we use. I know there's all kinds of type A, there's otters and, you know, the animals and all this, but those are the ones we're going to deal with, okay? How many of you have had classes before on the personalities? Okay, these will be this. Some of this will be the same, but some of it's going to be entirely different based on our input, okay? So let's, on page 19, it talks about the popular personality, the sanguine. What I'm going to do is read what they say, and then I'm going to add some stuff here. The sanguine types are the fun-loving, sunny, outgoing personalities who draw people to them because they seem to be having such a good time. They'd be the ones to place a bumper sticker on their car reading, "Are we having fun yet?" Often they can't remember where they're headed, they lose their keys, and they're prone to talk too much. They can turn a trivial event into a soap opera that grows more dramatic with each storytelling. They're humorous and fascinating and never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. In their charming way, they'll coyly tell you that they're not lying, they're just remembering creatively. Sanguines seek the attention, affection, approval, and acceptance of those around them. These boisterous individuals bring fun and drama into almost any situation. They love the spotlight and they enjoy motivating others. They initiate conversations and can instantly become best friends with everyone in the group. They're usually optimistic and almost always charming. However, they can also be disorganized, emotional, and hypersensitive about what others think of them. About a sanguine person, you might make comments such as, "She talks all the time," or "He never met a stranger." You may call this person the talker. So let's talk for a minute about the sanguine personality. The best illustration I have of a sanguine is my youngest daughter. And I think she's as about as sanguine as you can get. Had I have known when she was growing up that was the issue, it would have saved us a lot of problems. I thought the issue was rebellion. Case in point. After she started driving and stuff, I might say to her some morning, "Laurel, where you, what's your schedule today? Where are you going?" And she tells me, and I say, "Oh, you're going right by the laundry. I need my suit for Sunday. And could you pick up my suit at the laundry?" "Oh, yeah, Dad, be happy to do it." Now, it closes at 5 o'clock. You got to be there by 5. "Oh, yeah, Dad," because this was Saturday. "No problem, I'll do it." She drags in about 10 o'clock, and I say, "Laura, where's my suit?" "Oh, I forgot all about it." Well, I used to think, I think, she never intended to get it in the beginning. Why didn't she just tell me? Once I began to understand this, I realized she did forget all about it. Here's what happened. On her way to the laundry, she saw a stray dog. Now, you say, is this really true? No, I'm making it up, but it's probably true. Anything could be true. She sees a stray dog, and she gets out, and she helps that stray dog, and she runs into a young lady who the stray dog belongs to, and within 30 minutes, she's her best friend. They always have a best friend. Our daughter would say, "Oh, my best friend Terry, well, we haven't heard of Terry." "Oh, yeah, I met her yesterday." And she's already a best friend, and so her and Terry hit it off, and they went to get coffee, and then Terry was on her way to a party, so Laurel just goes to the party. You understand where I'm going with this? And all of a sudden, let me give you another story. And this is a true story, what I'm going to tell you. After the kids left home, they would, it was always a miracle if we could get them all together, all 3 of them together for a dinner or whatever. And so Janie would work hard at getting them all together, set it up months in advance because they all have schedules, and so dinner was going to be like at 2:00, and so everything's hot at 2:00, and everybody's there but Laurel. 2:30 comes, no Laurel. 3:00 comes, no. About 4:00, she comes walking in, happy as a camper, and by that time, dinner's ruined. My wife's ready to kill her, and it's a mess. Okay, and once we began to realize these personalities, we started changing our approach, because you can't change Laurel. You can help her work on her weaknesses, but you can't change her. And so what I would do, let's say if it was the same scenario and we knew dinner was, Janie was wanting to have it at 2, I would call Laurel about 9 in the morning and I'd get her out of bed. And I'd say, honey, you coming over? Oh yeah, Dad, can't wait. Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get there. And I say, well, what time do you think you're going to be there? And she says, well, what time is Mom wanting dinner? And I'd say, well, about 2. Oh, yeah, no problem. I can be there at 2. And I'll say, okay, what do you have to do before you get here? Now, I know she's still in bed. Well, I'm getting my hair done. I'm meeting Susie for coffee. And I'm meeting Jennifer for a quick lunch. And I'm going here and I'm going there. But I'll be there by 2. Now, is she lying? Not in her mind. She thinks she can do it. So I hang up the phone and I say, tell everybody we'll eat around 4:00. And sure enough, it works out. Now, that isn't helping her, but it sure helps me. It sure helps the family. And then we work on trying to help her to realize how that she can foul things up if she, doesn't change. Okay, let me give you one more story. She used to be in the cell phone industry, and she became a manager of one of the stores. In fact, they ended up making her manager of a kiosk in a mall. And so one time I called her about 11:00 in the morning, and I could tell I woke her up. And I said, honey, why are you still in bed at 11:00? She said, oh, Dad, she said, I didn't get home till 4 this morning. I said, you didn't get home till 4? I said, what were you doing till 4? She said, oh, I was working at the store. And my mind's thinking, mall, 4:00 in the morning, she didn't need. I said, honey, why were you there till 4? Now, here's the truth. This was her. Because it was the last day of the month and all the reports were due. The last day of the month. I said, well, honey, when did you start on the reports? When we closed at 9:00. Now, I would have started on the reports 2 days earlier, and this plugged in the last couple numbers at 9:00. Why couldn't she do that? Because she couldn't stand to be in the back room when there were people out there. Are you hearing me? Sanguines have to be around people. And the problem even in the church is, if you hire a sanguine and you stick her in a back room, you're going to destroy her. She's going to be depressed. Even if you need her to produce things, put her around people. She'll get it done. But she won't get it done alone because she can't function that way. Is this making sense to you? I'm just trying to give you a few tips here so that you can work in your own home, you can work in your ministry. Let me say it this way. Here's a statement. Extroverts, we all know the term extroverts and introverts. Extroverts gain energy when they're around people. They lose energy when they're alone. Introverts lose energy around people and gain energy when they're home. And the problem is, most of the time, extroverts marry introverts. Isn't that true? And she goes into this somewhere in this book. I'm just going to say it right here. Janie and I almost destroyed each other in the early years of our marriage because she wanted to go to everything and I didn't want to go to nothing. And if she stayed home with me all the time, all of a sudden I know she got depressed. And I think, am not I better to than all these other people? Well, that wasn't the point. The point was I don't talk well. And she needs to talk. But on the other hand, if she was dragging me everywhere, I'd get depressed. We finally had to learn that we didn't have to do everything together. To this day, I mean, this blows my mind, what I'm going to say right now. This blows my mind. To this day, she can be dead tired, and when she gets to the mall, she comes alive. I've never, I don't understand it, but it's just the way it is. That's how we're made, okay? But a lot of times she'll say, sometimes she doesn't want me to go with her because I'm over her shoulder, and sometimes I don't want to go. But once in a while, we just want to be together. And so she'll say, I'm going to the mall or wherever. Would you like to go? She said, bring some books. Oh, okay. So I'll bring a couple books. And this is how we operate. We'll go into a store. Let's say it's a mall store where you just have the opening there. And you walk in and they have all the specials right there, at the front to grab your attention. And she'll start right there. And I'll say, I'm going to see if there's anything in here. And I walk around. I know that by the time I get all the way back, she's still going to be at that same spot. And I just say, okay, I'm going to go to the coffee shop down here. Or I'll be right out here. And I'm just going to read. And we're fine. And later we can go to Gloria Jean's together or whatever. She meets me there. And I've already had 2 cups of coffee and read a book. And we're together. But we're not making each other change or become like them. Because what happens is the marriage is destroyed out of depression because of whichever way you go. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Okay, let's keep on going here. Anybody can jump in at any time if you want to, if you have a story or a happy one or a sad one. The perfect personality, they call it the melancholy. The opposite of the fun-loving sanguines, and the one they usually marry, is the melancholy. Deep, thoughtful, introspective, serious, and perfectionistic. Their motto is, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. They have difficulty seeing that they have any faults because they innately do everything right and can always show that the current problem is someone else's fault. They feel led to correct their sanguine mates' embellished statistics, slowing down an otherwise exciting story. With perfection as their goal, they often go through life downcast, discouraged, and depressed over the sins of others, especially over the blatant faults of their mate. What's the matter with you, they ask. Melancholies need sensitivity and support from others, and they require space and silence in which to think before they speak, write, or act. They're task-oriented folks who are careful and organized. These perfectionists thrive on order, and you can depend on them to complete a job on time. But their perfectionism may make them critical or pessimistic, and they drive themselves crazy with their efforts to measure up to their own high standards. When speaking about the melancholy, you'll likely say, she is so together, or he's such a perfectionist. You might call this person a thinker. Okay, let's talk about the melancholy for a minute. The melancholy personality is the personality that, let me say it this way. They never take anything at face value. If you're a leader and you're having to have a sit down with a melancholy, it goes like this. You say to them, this, this, and this. And they're thinking, what are they really trying to say? They don't take what you're saying at face value. They think you're hiding something. They're trying to read through the lines. When I'm sitting with a strong melancholy and I'm having to have a come to Jesus meeting, I will share with them what they need to hear. And then I will say, now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what is he trying to say? And I'm trying to say exactly what I said, and I'll go over it again. Because they're always trying to read between the lines. They're very perfectionist-oriented. Melancholies are very moody by nature. Now, before I go any further here, let me stop and say, for the sake of those of you that are trying to figure out what you are, if you don't already know, most people are not one personality. We're split personalities. We're usually three, at least two of the four. And here's the good part of it. It's better to have pieces of other personalities, because if you're almost all one personality, not only do you have all the strengths of that personality, you also have all the weaknesses of that personality. Okay. And so the reason I'm saying that at this point is some of you may think, well, I thought I was this, and now you're saying this, and that's me. Well, probably, as an example, my wife is a combination of three personalities. She's a choleric, sanguine, melancholy. In that order. That's the way you use the order. Choleric, sanguine, melancholy. And the melancholy is the one that drives me nuts. In fact, years ago, I tell this story. Years ago, before cell phones, if my wife and I had one of those mornings where we need to talk, and we've had some disagreement, and I left mad, or she was mad, or whatever, and I'm thinking, at the end of the day, oh my, I wish it wasn't the end of the day. I've got to go home now. But I wanted to see who I was going to meet when I got home. And so we didn't have cell phones, so I would make a phone call before I left the house. And back then you didn't even have, what do you call it? Notification, where you can see who's calling. Yeah. It was hello, And so she'd answer the phone, not knowing who it was, of course. Hello. Oh, hi, hon, it's me. And if I heard, oh. I knew that I was going to meet Miss Melancholy when I got home. So all the way home, I prepared myself to meet Miss Melancholy. Why? Because you don't say to Miss Melancholy when she tells you what kind of a day she had, oh, that wasn't bad. You should hear mine. No, that's not what you want to say. You want to say, oh, that's terrible. Give her some poor babies. So I prepare myself all the way for who I was going to meet when I got there. Now, there are people, when I've said that said, that's manipulation. No, it's smart. And it's not only smart, it's honoring her. Are you hearing me? It's honoring her because I'm preparing myself for who I'm meeting so I can honor her instead of destroy her. And there was a little manipulation in there too. But a little preservation, let's put it that way. So we're usually a mixture. Let me go one more. I have a hard time teaching this class because there's so many rabbit trails. Let me give you one more. My wife and I coined this phrase when we started teaching this. Since then, I've seen somebody else use it, so it's not simply original. But all I'm saying is we were thinking about this, and we sort of coined this phrase, that some people have a suppressed personality. And what I mean by that is, as an example, when my wife and I got married, she's a choleric, sanguine, melancholy. And when we got married, she thought she was married. She didn't know the terms and she didn't know all we're talking about. But as far as who she thought she was marrying if she were to put a name on it. She thought she was marrying a phlegmatic. Because my attitude was, and we'll get into phlegmatics, but my attitude was, oh well, no problem, no worry, very little passion, any of that. And after we were married a while, all of a sudden one day she said, where did this choleric in you come from? And after we started studying this and stuff, I had changed over the years. Now, had I really changed? No, I hadn't changed. But I had suppressed my personality because when I grew up in my family of origin, my opinion didn't matter. It was going to go their way anyway. So I finally just stepped back and let life happen. It was safer that way. And I'm not saying I got beat. I'm not saying that. I just mean, you know what I'm saying. It was just easier to just let life go and not say anything and not voice your opinion. But after we got married and I was in a safe environment, all of a sudden the real me began to stand up. And I've got quite a bit of choleric in me. Okay? It's a different strain of choleric than my wife's, which is good, but all I'm saying is you can have such a thing as a suppressed personality that begins to come out when you're in a healthy environment, because that's the real you. You've just been pushing it down all these years. Okay? So let's go back to melancholy. And then after we get through the 4, we'll open it up for questions and comments before I go any further. So perfectionist oriented. They like to do things with perfectionism. They're very moody. They're high highs and low lows. They're melancholies are usually your creative people. If you have musicians, now I'm not talking about somebody who can play an instrument. I'm talking about musicians. Real musicians oftentimes are melancholy. Real artists are melancholies. Real talented writers and thinkers are often melancholy personalities, and very creative people. As an example, Pastor Daniel. He's not there anymore, I don't think, but he was at the house for a while. And he was, when I was still there, I was in process of him coming over, but I left before he came over. And so one day I was down there in the offices, and he invited me into his office, and I walked into his office. And I said, you are a strong melancholy. And he said, why do you say that? Because he knew why I was saying it. I said, because of this, the way this office is fixed up. He said, no, I didn't fix it up. My wife did. She was the melancholy. She was the creative one. But I could see it in the room. When I walked into the room, I knew who had ever put that together has a melancholy personality. As an instructor, when I have a brand new class of students, before the first session's over, I can pretty well tell you what their personality is. Now, once in a while, somebody will fool me. I had one girl fool me there at the house. I really thought she was a strong melancholy. And I'd had her for a couple classes, and I thought, boy, this girl's a strong melancholy. And one day she came into one of my modular classes, and she was bouncing off the walls. I mean, she was laughing and talking and cheering and bouncing, and I said, whoa, 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 who are you? I said, I've never heard a word out of you. And she said, oh, this is me. And I said, well, why didn't I see you before? And I knew right then she was a strong sanguine. But why had I not seen it? I must have intimidated her. My persona must have intimidated, which is hard to do to a melancholy. But I have learned there at King's University that my reputation has preceded me. And that everybody who comes in that I've never had before, they've already heard about me. And so I don't know, maybe I intimidate some people. I don't know. I do know some people. My wife says my daughter, my oldest daughter, said that all of her friends were afraid of me. I said, me? Why is anybody afraid of me? And Janie said, yeah, why? She said, it's almost like you stand at the door with a shotgun, when her friends come over. I don't know. But anyway, usually I can tell. Why? Because when you learn this stuff, you can pick it up in people. Just in their persona and their... So melancholies are strong, creative people. And those are the kind of people you want to use when trying to initiate change, creative change, but at the same time, they're highly, what's the word I want? I'm trying to be nice. Hard to get along with? Temperamental, that's the word I'm looking for. Highly temperamental. And that's why musicians have a hard time getting along together. That's why worship teams can be the pastor's biggest nightmare. Shouldn't be, but can be. Okay. And you just need to understand that. Okay. The cleric. The powerful personality, the cleric. As melancholies think they're right, clerics know they're right. Even if everyone in the room opposes their ideas, they'll still forge ahead to get their way. Opposition only fortifies their determination. These people, male or female, young or old, are programmed to put more emphasis on getting their own way than on getting along with others or having people like them. There's little point in arguing with this person. You haven't got a chance. However, in a group, clerics become the presidents, get the work done, and don't waste time on foolish talk. They're the dynamic leaders of life, and their motto echoes Nike's slogan of just do it. Clerics seek loyalty and appreciation from others. They strive for control and expect credit for their achievements. They love being challenged and easily accept difficult assignments. Their self-discipline and ability to focus make them strong leaders, but their drive and determination can cause them to become workaholics, make them opinionated and stubborn, and leave them insensitive to others' feelings. Of the cleric, you may say, he really gets in your face. Or if you want to get something done, ask her. You would call this person the doer. And that's true. I mean, if you want to get something done, get a cleric. Get a busy person. They'll get it done. They'll get it done. Here's the thing with the cleric. They can be bossy. And whether they are really bossy or not, they're perceived as being bossy by some of the other personalities. So if you're a strong cleric, you have to understand that even if you are really not bossy, you are perceived as being bossy. When you have certain personalities, especially phlegmatics and maybe even melancholies, but especially phlegmatics, and they're strong phlegmatics, and you are a strong cleric, do yourself a favor and watch how they respond when you walk in the room. Sometimes it's like this. All they have to do is see you come through the door, and they begin to step back. Why? You intimidate them. And because what you intend to be creative, constructive direction, they take as you're trying to take over and be bossy. They haven't realized that that's who you are. Okay? So you have to realize how you're being perceived. Now, some clerics are very bossy. But even if you're not, you're oftentimes perceived that way. I remember a strong cleric in the church I pastored in the Bay Area. Very strong cleric. But boy, she could get the stuff done. I mean, those clerics, they know how to get the stuff done. And one day, she was over our children's program. And it was Christmas time. I forget, I think it was Christmas. It was either Christmas or Easter. They were having a play on the Sunday. a program from the children's program. And I'm in my office, and I knew she's there, and I hear her pulling things out onto the platform from back behind where all this prop stuff is. And I thought, I haven't heard anybody else. So I walk out there, and she's doing it all by herself. And I said to her, I said, my goodness, is nobody coming to here? Oh, she said they all had excuses today. So I'm just doing it. I said, well, here, let me help you. I said, honestly, I said, I'm sick. But because I was feeling bad. I said, and I just happened to say it. I said, I'm sick, but here, let me help you. I don't want you to do it alone. But when I said I'm sick, she said, who isn't? Okay, okay, and that's, that was how she was, Now, she was a strong one, and she had a hard time getting along with anybody, okay? But cholerics are the get-her-done people. As an example, if, and we're not doing it, but if I was providing you dinner tonight, and all of a sudden somebody come through that door, and they were the caterer, and they were carrying this food platter, and they tripped over here somewhere, and the food went all over the place. Some of you, and I'm talking about if I had a big crowd, or some would just look, and the cholerics would stand up and say, you get a broom, you get a dust mop, you call 911. They just take charge. They know what to do. Now, here's the thing. A choleric doesn't have to think about what to do. They know what to do. And they're right. But if there's 4 of them in the room, they all know how to do it their way. Are you following me? Funny little story, but when I was first at what was Calvary Temple at that time, now the house, I was not only over the school, I was over baptisms, the discipleship classes, the ushers, the welcome center, the coffee area. All those ministries I was over, and I had people that would help me do the. But the one that drove me nuts was the coffee area. Absolute. Every Sunday morning, there's drama going on in the coffee area. And one day something happened, and there was more drama. Janie happened to be standing there. I said, it's the least spiritual thing we've got, and it causes me all this trouble. I'm just going to go up in the next staff meeting and say, can I just stop the coffee ministry? Let's just close the thing down. It was just driving me nuts. And what we had is we had volunteers, and we had different crews of volunteers for the different services. And something happened one Sunday, and all of a sudden the Lord spoke to me, and he said, would you like to know why you have so much problem in that area? I said, Lord, I would really love to know. And he said, because you have 4 different crews and a choleric in charge of each crew. And they all know how to do it, but they all know how to do it differently. And sure enough, I'm thinking about it. Each choleric was complaining about the last crew. That's what it was. They didn't do it. Well, here's what you got to understand. They all know how to do it. They just know how to do it differently. You following me? And so they're a very strong personality. Remind me to talk about, after I go through phlegmatic, remind me to talk about job descriptions in regard to the personalities. Okay? Don't let me forget that in just a minute here. The peaceful personality is the phlegmatic. Strong-willed cholerics gravitate toward phlegmatics who will agree with them and not cause them any trouble. Cholerics a lot of times marry phlegmatics because then they can have their way. See, that's what my wife thought was happening. Now, she didn't marry me for that purpose, but it worked out good. Until I begin to come alive. See? It's not that the phlegmatics aren't bright. Actually, they're smarter than the rest of us. They know that a sweet, pleasant personality will cause others to do their work. They think in terms of conserving energy and feel that if you ignore something long enough, someone else is going to do it. They're easygoing and diplomatic, but don't move fast enough for most cholerics. In marriage, the cholerics are constantly nagging the phlegmatics to work faster, But the phlegmatics learn to tune them out, sticking to their own motto of don't sweat the small stuff. Phlegmatics dislike risk, challenge, and surprise and will require time to adapt to changes. Although they avoid situations that are too stressful, they can work well under pressure. However, their lack of discipline and motivation often allows them to procrastinate in the absence of a strong leader. Phlegmatics are reserved, but they enjoy being around people. Although they don't have the need to talk as much as the sanguine, they have an innate wit and seem to say the right thing at just the right time. They're steady and stable, and because they are security-oriented, they like to create safety for their spouses and children. They seek peace and quiet and tend to act as negotiators instead of fighters. These loyal individuals find worth and respect in providing for their families and assisting people who need help. When referring to the phlegmatic, you may say things like, he's such a nice guy, or she's so sweet, and you would view this person as a watcher. The phlegmatic is never in a hurry. Mañana. There's always mañana. There's always tomorrow. If two phlegmatics marry each other, the garage never gets cleaned out. Okay. One of the strongest phlegmatics I know is a friend of mine when I pastored in the Bay Area, one of the men in the church. And to this day, I mean, he moves like a snail. In fact, whenever I need to fly out of San Francisco and I need a place to stay the night before or whatever, I can always call him and say, can I come over and stay at your place and you take me to the airport the next morning? Sure, you know. And sometimes I don't do that, but I'll just say, I'm going to the airport. Can I come to your house and leave my car there and you take me to the airport? And, sure, no problem. And so he says, what time do you have to be there? If I have to be there at 11, I tell him I have to be there at 10. Because I know what's going to happen. And so, you know, I'll tell him an hour ahead. And so I'll drive up, and as I drive up, he's coming out of his house, and he's putting his hat on. Just the right way, you know, putting his hat on. Then he walks over to his car, and he bought this car from his son-in-law. His son-in-law had it and was going to trade it in, and he said, oh, why don't you sell it to me? So he bought this candy apple blue Mustang convertible, white interior. Why he's got it, I don't know. If I had that, boy, you could make some time. He gets in the car, fixes his hat again, gets the seatbelt on, makes sure everything's in place, turns on the key, pulls out, and then we take the scenic route. We don't get on the freeway. We take the scenic route. Now, it's pretty, but sure enough, I get there just on time, and everything's okay. Let me tell you another story. Is anybody here a golfer? Anybody golf? Okay, well, one of the things about golfing is if you're slow, you know, there's people backing up behind you, you just step back and let them play through so that you're not holding up, you know. Well, whenever Dan's with you, you know there's going to be people held up. And because here's how he does it. And if you ever watched it on TV or whatever, when you go up to the ball, you're supposed to address the ball, you know. And he'll go up and he'll address the ball, then he'll step back, and he'll address it about 4 times. And so one time we're there, and the groups are starting to back up behind us. And he's up there addressing the ball for like the 4th time. And I know the people are pulling their hair out, you know. And one of us said, Dan? Yeah. Sort of backing up here, we probably ought to let them play through. I paid my money just like they did. I mean, that didn't bother him a bit, you know. And we're embarrassed, and you know. But anyway, I mean, it's just slow as molasses. There's always tomorrow. Now, a lot of times people say that cholerics will say that phlegmatics can't make decisions. They can make decisions. It's just that the choleric makes them like this, and they need about a month or 2. It's true, you know, because they need to hear every opinion and think it through. And You know, but they're very loyal. They're very loyal. And they will get the job done. You give them a job, you give a phlegmatic a job, and they will get it done. Now, I told you I remembered this about work things. Here's something else that will help you in ministry. It will help you on the job. It will even help you at home. If you have a job that you need to get done, follow this through with me. And you go to a cleric and you say, we're at A and we need to get to Z. Do this, 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 and this, and get it done. If they respect you, they may not say this. But I guarantee you, even if they respect you, they're thinking it. What do you need me for? You know how to do it. But if you go to the phlegmatic and say, we're at A and we need to get to Z, do this, 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 and this, they say, sure, and they get it done. If you go to the choleric, you need to say, we're at A and we need to get to Z. Figure out a plan as to how to get there. Tell me your plan, run it by me, and then get it done. And they say, yes, sir. But if you go to the phlegmatic and you say, we're at A and we need to get to Z, figure out a plan and run it by me and get it done, they'll freeze. Because they don't know how to do the steps. You have to tell them how to do the steps. But you don't want to tell the choleric because they already know how to do it. You following me? It means you have to know their personality and deal with them differently for them to be able to function based on their personalities. Okay, that was very quick. Usually it takes us 6 sessions, not in this class, but when I teach it at church, 6-hour sessions at least to get through what I just got through. But any questions before we turn gears here and go into the marriage concept or go into some other concepts of this? Questions or comments?
I noticed for me, I have a few lines of one and a few lines of the other. So, can you just diagnose yourself, I guess?
Well, in your book, there's a on page 25 and 26, there is a personality profile questionnaire. And then on page 27 is a scoring sheet, how to score it. And it will tell you. Now, the biggest problem with this, I can tell. And so you need to have your book and do this. You need to do this test. I can tell by when a person does the test, how they do the test, I can tell their personality. The choleric is taking the test like this. The phlegmatic, well, let's put it, the sanguine is too busy talking to take it. The melancholy see where I'm going with this? They got to be perfect. Have you ever seen Monk? Be a little monkish. The phlegmatic doesn't, the phlegmatic doesn't even know there's a test. I mean, we can do it tomorrow, I mean, you can just, even by the way a person takes the test. As an example, when I first started teaching this back in about 2004, in school, we had taught it in churches before, but in school, there was this young woman in class at GBI, and she was one of the most melancholy people I'd ever met. And so we're taking Marriage and Family, and when we I had them do the assessment in class. It took her longer than everybody else. When she got through, she just sort of blurts out, "Why, I'm almost all melancholy." And we're all laughing, because, she is. The day of the final exam, now listen to me. The day of the final exam, it's a 2-hour limit, time limit. 2 hours come and go and she's not done. And she said to me, Pastor Cook, is there any way I'm not done, can I finish? I said, I've got a little time, I'll just sit here and work. Go ahead, because I knew she's a strong melancholy. After about a half hour, I said, I've got to go. I said, now I would never do what I did back then. I said, I've got to go. But I said, you know what? Just take it home and finish it and turn it in to me next week or take it to the office. She never turned it in because it wasn't perfect. And she ended up failing the class because she could not turn in an imperfect exam. Isn't that something? That strong ingrained in her, And so, yeah, we're usually more of one. In fact, like I say, it's in your book, and you can take it. So it'll help you understand. And what happens is, as I said, when you're more than one personality, hopefully the strengths of the other offset the weakness of the potential personality. Because every personality has strengths and weaknesses. Okay. And hopefully they offset one another. Anyone else? Yes.
I remember when I was going to get married and told my mom, we go to a party and my boyfriend at the time was just willing to sit there and just look around and enjoy what was going on. And I had to be involved. I said, is that wrong? And she said, well, you're two different people and you're going to, we were engaged at the time. You're coming together and you make a whole. And I thought that was really interesting. Well, now having studied the personalities, I'm a three-part personality. And there's nothing phlegmatic about me except I'm loyal.
Right.
My husband is totally.
I was thinking of that as I was talking about this.
We have a little bit of choleric.
He's got some choleric, yeah, but mostly phlegmatic.
And honestly, I don't know that I could be married to anybody else.
Right.
Because it's like,
Right.
he's what I need. And
Right.
hopefully.
Right.
Some days I know he doesn't think so. But.
As an example, if there was a party tonight of people we didn't know, and we were invited to it. Let's say there was 60, 70 people. It was one of those where you're holding a Coke and you're walking around talking, or coffee, Coke, whatever. Janie'd be right in the middle of the whole thing. I'm going to be over in the corner with another guy who likes the same sport I like or the same team I like or is into the same thing. And we'll sit there, we'll talk to each other the whole time, you see. And, when we first got married, that was hard to do because, if you're not careful, you're thinking, well, she likes them better than she likes me, or she thinks the same thing, But now we understand that's just who we are. And we need to let each other be who we are. See, and but yeah, I was thinking of your husband as I was talking, and yeah, you'll find out as you read this book that it tells you what happens when you marry different personalities, but what happens when you marry the same personality too. See, you have two strong cholerics, and they both know how to do it. See, and. So what do you do when a choleric marries a choleric? You split up the jobs. This is your part. This is my part. That way you don't get in each other's way, you see. And you need to understand that, yes.
I was going to comment on what you said about your husband, because my friend's a musician, and so am I, and so we write a lot of songs together and play gigs, and my personality, I'm not a cleric, but I'm the melancholy.
Mm-hmm.
But I can be very, I can get things done really well on the schedule, very organized.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's the cleric part of you.
that's the cleric part, right? And my friend is I've been trying to figure him out lately, so this is hilarious, phlegmatic, so try to rehearse or get
Right.
stuff done, and it's just so chill, it's just so chill. And I'm like, is there something wrong with me? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it does, the differences can create, it helps.
Tension, and it can create tension too, until you understand it. See, once you understand it, you're thinking, oh, that's just them.
Yeah, and you can learn to work with people that are different. Instead
Yes.
of like, what's wrong with it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's so great to be balanced, you know,
Yeah.
he balances me,
Yeah,
and
Sure.
I balance him, and like you said, you have to learn that that's how it works.
Right.
Otherwise, you're thinking, he's so lazy, how could I marry a lazy person?
Right. Right.
He's totally not lazy.
No, he's not lazy,
He's
but
not doing it like I would want him to do it.
the choleric personality is the highest energy personality. The phlegmatic personality is the lowest energy personality. I mean, it is, you know, and you have to understand that, right, Alex?
I'm known, my friends call me the phlegmatic sanguine. I don't know what that means, but.
Well, you are. You're a phlegmatic sanguine. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they've gone through the school, haven't they?
Yeah, Jacob and Alfred, they're like, Alex, you're this, and this, but you have a lot of choleric abilities because what I do. And
I'd say you've got some melancholy personality. I would, if I were, now I'm just guessing, and you know, and because I don't really know you, but just from watch, I would say that you are a phlegmatic, melancholy sanguine. That's the way I, you know, just, but I could be wrong. I'm just saying, you know. You just pick these things up when, you know, and you watch it and you think, oh, well, that's who they are, you know. And so interesting. Let's take for instance. I'm thinking of a person right now. I hadn't thought about this before until just now. A lady one day was the manager of Roundtable, or she was assistant manager or something. She was in charge that day. This was a long time ago. Janie and I went there and ordered a pizza and got one salad from the salad bar. Now, what we know is we don't eat much. And you can take one plate and we can share it, and it's the same as somebody else taking it. We don't even go back for the second plate like people go back. She got one salad and put stuff on one half I like, and we're sitting there eating it, and this lady comes up and she says, I'm sorry, you can't do that. We said, we can't do what? And she said, only one person can eat from, you know. And we tried to explain to her what I was just saying, that in reality, both of us are eating less than probably anybody else in here. That didn't matter. The rule is the rule. And she was irate. And finally, after we couldn't talk with her, I went up and I said, here, I'm going to pay for a second. Oh, no, I don't want you. I said, yeah, she wouldn't let me. She was mad. So what was she? A strong choleric melancholy. The melancholy part of her was right and wrong. And the choleric was, I'm in charge here. You know, and I'd not thought about that till we were just talking right now. And you begin to understand that about people. And it's interesting. But when you're in ministry as well as in marriage, it's invaluable. When you have kids, it's invaluable to understand this.
I wish I would know.
Oh, yes.
When you're raising.
Yes. Hey, let me give you one story. I don't think it's in this book. I think it's in one of her other books. I could be wrong. You've read most of it, so if it is, you can tell me if it's in here. But there's this. She tells this story of a man and woman who had a couple kids, and then they had this little boy, and they went to a Christian counselor, their pastor or Christian, because they thought their boy was demon possessed. And the counselor or the pastor, whatever it was, is saying to them, what makes you think he's demon possessed? And listen to this story. She said, well, as you know, our house is immaculate. He said, yes, I've been to your home. And she said, and then she tells him the story. What we do is on the living room coffee table, we put like this is, let's March. So we put March's magazine subscriptions on that coffee table in order, but we don't read them until April because we want them to be, we don't want to get creased. So they read Marches and April, and when April's comes in, they take the Marches one off and they put the Aprils out so they can read Marches then. And our little boy comes in and he sees those things and he just throws them all over the place. He's got to be demon possessed. And this person starts laughing and he said, no. And he explained to him, you're just strong melancholies, and you've got this little boy who's not a melancholy. He's a sanguine, or he's probably a cleric, And they couldn't believe it. They thought he was demon possessed because nobody outside of the devil would do to their magazines what that little boy did. That just goes to show how ingrained this stuff gets in you. You see. And I wish I'd have known before I raised my kids all of this. You see. And so some interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Let's move on just a little bit here. In our book, let's go to, you can tell we're running out of time. How about the heading on page 32? Some of these headings I'm just going to read, because you're going to be reading your book anyway, but the headings say volumes. Miserable marriages can make you sick. Isn't that true? Miserable marriages can make you sick. It's a very interesting stuff. A good marriage is good for you. Unrealistic expectations on page 34. The problem with too many people going into a marriage is they have unrealistic expectations. He is going to save me from my sins. He is going to, the knight in shining armor. Guess what? That knight needs to be polished up a little bit, needs to be changed, and needs to man up. And so a lot of times we go in with unrealistic expectations. Why? The in love experience. When you're in love, when you fall in love, that person seems like an angel. All of a sudden one day, they're demon possessed. Something got into them, okay? And they're not that angel anymore, And then page 37, the heading is Lord, change him. And let me tell you a story along that line. As I said, it's hard to do this class tonight because we should have been halfway through this already. And so I'm just picking and choosing here. But this Lord, change him. Let me share a story with you about marriage, a real life marriage. And it was my marriage. And I want you to understand that there are no perfect marriages. There are no marriages, I don't think most marriages are made in heaven. I think you have to make them down here. But anyway, I entered my marriage relationship with my wife. I married her when I was 20. Wanted to have a child right away. Big mistake. We had a child at 21. I was a senior pastor at 22. So I'm married, have a child, and I'm a pastor at 22, and I don't know how to do any of them because of the way I was raised. And years later, after I thought through all this and got some help and everything, all of a sudden I realized now why I got married at 20, had a kid at 21, and started pastoring at 22 is because in my upbringing, I didn't have a family, so I was going to make one. I realized that's what happened. Okay, but then all of a sudden I had it, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I was a mess, and I was destroyed. Now, there's two sides to every marriage. Everybody's got some stuff. But I had a lot of baggage and a lot of stuff. And what I was doing is I was destroying my wife and my kids in the process. And the first years of our marriage were not happy ones. I mean, they were happy times, but and so as time progressed, I finally realized one day, some years later, if I don't change, this marriage is not going to change. And I've got to get some help. And so I started going to some counselors and trying to get some help and trying to get some reality to things. And all of a sudden, when I made this decision, change started. I started to change, and it started changing things in my home, but something happened, and this scenario would happen. I was making changes, I was doing well, my family was doing better, and then all of a sudden, I would say something or do something, and my wife would just lose it. And then I'd say, here's the next thing, what I'd say. What do you expect from me? You wanted me to change, and I've been making changes, and then something happens, and time after time after time. And so after one of those times when I had said something and my wife had lost it, and I went to the church mad, and I got down on my knees and I started praying, and I said, God, change this woman that thou hast given me. And God spoke to me. And he said, would you like to know why she responded like she responded? I said, Lord, I really would. Because I've been changing. And she's seen the change. And yet she responds that way. And this is what God spoke to me. He said, because she sees the changes. But in the past, when you would say something like this, you'd say that, but you'd mean that. And so now, when you say something, she has a flashback to the former, and she responds to that former. And this is what he said to me. You sowed that into her, and you're going to have to take responsibility for that harvest. And so he said, the next time that happens, instead of saying, I don't know why, here's what I want you to say. I said, okay, Lord. Well, it didn't take long for it to happen again. Something come up, and I said something, and she responded incorrectly. And I'm just getting ready to go into my old tirade again, and I remembered my conversation with God. And I remembered what he told me to do. So I just, rather than do that, I stopped and I said in a normal tone of voice, honey, I know why you responded to me the way you responded just now, because God told me what was going on. He told me that in the past, when I would say that, even though I was saying that, it meant something else. And that when I say those things now, it makes you flashback. But he told me, I sowed that in you, and I've got to be responsible for that harvest. And I understand that, and I take responsibility. But God is my witness. When I said it, I didn't mean that other. I meant exactly what I said. She came down like somebody punched a hot air balloon. And she said, you really are changing. See, here's what you got to understand. Marriages have to be made. Changes have to happen. I heard an illustration years ago, and this will be very helpful to the guys, that a woman's spirit is like a rose. Have you ever seen a rose at night? It's closed up, isn't it? When the sun goes down, the rose closes up. And then when the sun comes out, what happens? It opens up. And he said, that's like a woman's spirit. But when a woman's spirit has been abused, it closes up. And when the sun comes on it, it doesn't open because she's closed up. But he said, if you keep working at it and keep loving her and keep helping, eventually the fist of her spirit will get a little looser and it will start to open up. But all it takes is one wrong move and it closes up again. I've never forgotten that. Never forgotten that. And so our job as men is to open up that rose, open up that spirit. But it takes manning up and being the man we're supposed to be. I'm a firm believer that while both men and women bring dysfunction into a marriage, that it's the man's responsibility to lead that family. And if there's problems, it's the man's responsibility to fix it. I just believe that. And that's why we, at our church, when we have our men's things, I just get down with those guys and just, I don't let them wiggle out. Because guys like to wiggle out. I don't let them wiggle out. And anyway, got to move on here. Losing time fast. So Lord, change him, or Lord, change her. Let's see. The thing is, when we have our own personality, we want, if we're not careful, we want our spouse to operate in our personality. That's the same thing, the concept we're going to get into the love languages. We have our own love language, and we tend to speak in that language to the other person and not understand why they don't feel loved. It's because we're not speaking in their language. Okay. Talks about creative combinations on 41. One of the most helpful principles of the personalities is that we fall in love with the opposite strengths. But this also means we go home to live with the opposite weaknesses. Isn't that true? He gave us a desire for someone who's different and who fills in our gaps so that we together can make a whole, which is what you were talking about. Yes. She says, as I look back on raising our children, I realize we balanced each other out. Think of having two of Fred. What a serious perfectionist life with no laughs that would be. Then again, the laughs of two sanguine parents might not be so funny if the children are late for school each day and had no lunches. See? So we balance each other out. And that's the great part of it. Okay. She says here, talking about marrying different, it's on chapter 3, when symbols crash, hot conflicts in marriage, spending money, disciplining kids, planning a vacation. These decisions can cause conflict for even those dedicated of married couples. But when neither spouse understands the personality of the other, these conflicts can magnify into marriage disasters. Let's talk about a vacation for just a minute. I heard this from Bill Hybels. You know the name Bill Hybels. He pastors in Illinois. And his wife is a strong melancholy and likes quiet time, and he's a strong sanguine and loves to be around people. And so his idea of a vacation is going where there's thousands of people, and hers is going where there's nobody. And he said they used to have problems picking a vacation spot because of that. And he said they finally figured it out. One year, she gets to pick where they go, and the next year he picks where they go. He said, when I pick where there's a lot of people. When she picks where there's no people. He said one year she picked, and she got us out in the woods in this cabin where the closest person was about 2 miles away. And he said she was just in heaven. And she had her books, and she was so happy. And he said after about a day and a half of that, he said, I was climbing the walls. He said, I just walked out of the house. I walked to the nearest house, knocked on the door and said, hi, my name's Bill. What's yours? You know, he found somebody, you know. And, but you can see how that, you know, if it's a strong choleric, one of them strong choleric, they're always making the choice. It's destroying the other person. See? So like he said, she says, popular sanguines want to make life spontaneous and fun, but the perfect melancholies that they often marry want life to be serious and in order. Oh, recipe for disaster unless you love each other and work at it. See, and then she talks about hot topics that can create tension and frustration that eat away at the couple's love. One of them is finances. The carefree sanguine, whose idea of balancing the checkbook is to write a check and see if it bounces, tends to spend money on anything that sounds fun. Melancholies, by contrast, are very detailed and want to investigate matters fully before any investment is made. When the choleric sets her mind on a financial goal, there's no stopping her. This is the person who will shift her savings and investments frequently just to get the best deal and feel that she's controlling her money. But by contrast, phlegmatic spouses just hope someone else will take care of the budget. They may just save a bundle of money and never get around to buying the item they were saving for. Can you see how it works? You see how it works. You know, just like our kids used to say to us when years ago, when they'd want to go somewhere and we'd say, well, honey, we don't have the money. We'll write a check. Well, the sanguine, that's the way they think, you know. Or they'll do that. Nowadays, most people don't have checks. They have debit cards. They check their phone to see if the other stuff have come through yet or not, so they see if they've got enough to go out, you know. So finances is a big one. Social activities. We've already talked about social activities, how it affects different people differently. He talks about sex, the way the different personalities deal with sex. You'll be reading that. Eating habits. Sanguines eat because it's fun and because fattening foods taste good. They have trouble seeing the connection between a hot fudge sundae and a tight outfit. And food is often related to social activities, and many spiritual sanguine women get chubby from too many church potlucks. Weight control is most difficult for sanguines because they're undisciplined, they lack follow-through, and always believe they'll start a diet next week. Melancholies are the opposite of undisciplined sanguines. They love menu planning and they eat to enjoy a fine culinary experience. They tend not to overeat except when they're struggling with depression. Remember I said they can be highly moody? If they do overeat, they usually do it in secret, becoming closet drinkers and eaters. They don't want to show their poor habits to anyone because they're afraid people might think less of them. The melancholies don't go for miracle diets, but they'll try balanced, nutritious meals with the goal of taking off 2 pounds a month and keeping it off for life. But cholerics are fast food, fast action, and fast loss leaders. They eat for the practical purpose of gaining sustenance, and once they're convinced they're getting fat, they get right down to business. They join a health spa to get to work. They have no time for books, lifelong programs, or parties and dancing leotards. They choose a diet that is close to a miracle. If the first diet doesn't work quickly, they give up and try another. Phlegmatics will eat whenever and wherever food is easily accessible. Remember that guy I was talking about, that phlegmatic who would drive me to the airport and stuff? He loves to eat. And one day, he's a teacher, and one of the students asked him, they said, well, Mr. Ruiz, they said, what's your favorite meal? What's your favorite food? He said, well, the one that's in front of me. He was serious. Yeah. They'll eat whenever and whatever food is easily accessible. They're slow starters, especially on things like diet and exercise. For them, exercise is especially difficult because it takes so much effort and shows so little results. They tend to put off their weight loss program until a better time, and they won't even consider attempting to diet during the holidays. Interesting how every personality views this stuff differently. differently. And then work. Sanguines see work as a necessary evil, but will work hard at a job if there's a fun reward to be had. Melancholies, by nature, enjoy detailed work that requires thinking and concentration. Cholerics are the types who can easily become workaholics. And phlegmatics tend to put off work and procrastinate when it comes to difficult tasks. She tells a story in here of a woman, it's somewhere in this book, of a woman who wanted her husband to redo the backyard. Did you read that one? Remodel the backyard. Now I'm telling it from memory of reading it a long time ago, but I think I'm right. And she worked on it. He kept saying, oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get it done. Well, finally, his daughter's getting married, and she wanted to have the backyard for her reception, I think it was. And so he went out and he remodeled that whole backyard 17 years after his wife first started asking him. But to him, it was right on time. I told you I'd get it done.
He said, we should have done this a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, duh. Isn't that amazing? You can identify with some of this, can't you? Oh, my goodness. This is funny. Parenting. The popular parent's the sanguine. Why? Because he just wants to have fun. And the kids love to have fun. And the perfect parent's the melancholy. Because everything's in order. And the meals are all at the same time, and right on down the line. And then there's the powerful parent, which is choleric. Cholerics believe that if everyone would only do things their way, which is immediately, we'd all live happily ever after. The choleric father is accustomed to giving firm orders in the business world without anyone second-guessing him, and he expects the same at home. Hey, that works till the kids become teenagers. I'll never forget the time my youngest daughter, the one I was talking about, said to me, I don't know what happened. Don't even remember the circumstances. I just remember her statement because it cut through me like a knife. Something had happened, and her and I had got into this big argument. And it was a smart mouth. She needed to be slapped for it, but I couldn't because it was too true. She said something like, oh my, from God's man of faith and power. And I thought, she got me, But I mean, it's, when the kids get older, they call you out. They call you out. I think those of you that might have older kids understand, or maybe you are an older kid. You understand. And then the peaceful parents, the phlegmatic. Anything goes. Dad, can I do such and such? Go ask your mom. Dad, can I stay out till 2 this morning? Go ask your mom. And so interesting. Here's on page 68. Let's go over the emotional needs of each personality. The emotional needs. The emotional needs of the sanguine. The sanguine are gimme needs. And so here's their emotional needs. Number 1 is attention. Sit down, look them in the eye, and listen. Don't interrupt, cut them off, look around the room, or try to fix it when they're sharing a problem. They just want your attention. Secondly, they want approval. They're desperate for approval. Number 3, they want affection. Sanguines want to be loved. And number 4, they want activity. Don't ignore your spouse's request to get out or spend time with friends. They feel like an animal in a cage when they're not allowed interaction with family and friends. So they need attention, approval, affection, and activity. By the way, if you have strong sanguines, they could be, and you look and give them jobs, they're great salespeople. That's why my daughter did so well in the cell phone industry. her sanguine personality. Everywhere she went, she was passing out cards and telling people to come. And everywhere she went, she always was the #1 seller. And I said to her one day, I said, Laurel, how do you sell so? She said, it's easy, Dad. If some guy comes in to buy a phone, I just say, well, how many people in your home? Well, there's 5 of us. Oh, I can give you a good deal. You can get 5 phones today for a little bit more. And I just sell them 5 phones, you know. Yeah. So, yeah, he come in for 1 and goes out with 5, you know. So sanguines are good salespeople, but they're just, they have, here's a good heading for them. Disorganized fun is what they have. Disorganized fun. What sanguines need, you know, in a sense, are poor babies. You know, when a sanguine starts telling you how their day went, oh, poor baby. That's what they're looking for, you know. Instead of you trying to tell them how it should have happened, just give them a poor baby. She tells a story in one of these books. I forget which one it is. It might be this book. Of the time she couldn't remember where she parked her car. Was that?
No, that's personality fun.
Okay. She couldn't remember where she parked her car. She went to the mall. You know, there's all those parking levels. And she parked her car, and she couldn't remember where she parked her car. So she's looking all over, and finally one of the security guy comes along and says, what's the matter? Man, I can't remember where I parked my car. Well, it wasn't she. They started looking for a certain colored car. And they went, though, and another guy says, what are you doing? We're looking for a car. So he's looking for this yellow car or whatever. They're looking all over. And after about an hour, she remembers, oh, wait a minute. I didn't drive the yellow one. I drove the blue one, you know. So they had to start all over. And her husband, when she gets home and tells him, he's just shaking his head, thinking of those poor security guys and glad it wasn't him, you know. That's just the way they are, you know. So,
I called my husband one time from the mall, and I said, I think someone stole our car. He said, okay, where did you park it? I said, I just parked it right here, and I put all the gifts in, and then I went back in the mall, and I came back, and the car's not there. He said, I'll be down. So we got this guy with the little winning scooter or golf cart or whatever we're going around. I just saw it, you know. I think it's stolen. I saw this truck down the. And he said, no. There's your car right there. I was so embarrassed. And then my girlfriend said, you know, sometimes our guys, meaning women like us, need to see that we need them desperately.
yeah.
And Paul was not upset with me. He was not punitive. If I'd have had a choleric personality in church, he'd probably never let me forget it.
Right.
Like my
Right.
dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
My husband it was so sweet.
Yeah.
That was very nice.
Yeah.
A mental note before I started my car.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, this one's called instant wallpaper. And this is true. Sanguines often tend to underestimate the amount of time it will take them to complete a project. It tells about this woman, she's getting ready to have a party, and a couple hours before she decides to change the wallpaper on the wall. My wife will do that kind of stuff. And you know, here's how our week will go. When we've got, the busier the week, the more she wants to add to it. And you're thinking, you know, can we add one more thing to this week? You know, because what she fails to realize is if it falls on her, it also falls on me. You know. Okay, melancholy's emotional needs. Number 1 is support. They need to know you're with them. Number 2, they need space. They need their own space. Number 3, they need silence. They don't need noise, chatter, company, or chaos. They need a place where they can get away from the family. They need stability. They need to feel a sense of order in their lives. So try to respect their daily routines and only interrupt this pattern when you have a true emergency. I have a few melancholy personality traits, not many, but I have a certain way I get ready in the morning. And if I have to change that routine, I'm liable to get somewhere that I forgot to brush my teeth because I had to change my routine, you know. So we do have certain routines, you know. Okay.
We're laughing because of these poor guys. They're like, why is that so?
Yeah.
I do it. My mom's the same way. We have a week that's like insanely busy. I mean, I swear, like, last month we had a party. We had a party for some of our friends, and like things had to be moved, of course, 9 times. Right? I was like, whatever, I'm used to that. Whatever, I have to move everything. I swear they were coming within an hour, and then some of the tables were not right anymore. Some of the tables were somehow terrible, and they needed to be moved from outside to inside. And I was like, you're kidding me, right? Like, it's not going to be done, but I don't care. I don't like it. I don't like it. Of course you don't. Of course.
But here's the thing, young man. Get used to it.
Oh, no, I
Suck it up.
That's what I'm thinking in my head. Of course. I was like, yeah.
What's funny is when we have sometimes when Janie wants to do all that kind of stuff, she doesn't just rely on me anymore. She gets some help. She gets other guys over there, and after a while, I just walk out and let them. And she, you know, I can tell she's wanting to get me out of there anyway, you know, because I'm pouring water on her parade, you know. Oh my, this is being taped. I'm in trouble. I'm not going to let her read it and listen to it. Okay, the choleric's emotional needs. Choleric's emotional needs. Number 1 is appreciation. They need to know that you appreciate all that they've done for you. Well, they think they're doing it for you, you know. Number 2 is action. They want action on your part. They love work and expect others to keep up the same hyper pace that they exhibit. They tend to marry phlegmatics for their peaceful, non-confrontational natures, but soon they get upset when their mate takes a nap. What's the matter with you? It's only 2 in the afternoon. We've got a garage to clean. Well, we can do that tomorrow. Number 3, they need opportunity for leadership. Need opportunity for leadership. Here's a good, this will help you. If you ever pastor a church and you have strong cholerics in your church, give them a job to do so they won't try to do yours. That's true. Sometimes you just make up a job just to give them something to do or they'll try to do yours, you know. Number 4, they need something to control. So much stuff in here. Cholerics' driven personalities make them great leaders. They're hard-nosed and they don't want to take the time to understand their spouse's point of view. They just want to see things get done their way since they assume it's the best way. The miraculous ministry of shut up. And then the phlegmatic emotional needs. Of course, they desire to have peace in life. So there's their emotional needs. Number 1 is peace. Phlegmatics want peace and a lack of pressure. Number 2, self-worth. They need a sense of self-worth. Often they've grown up in a home where they tended to be ignored by a parent who had to attend to the more demanding children. Therefore, they didn't have any self-worth, and they stuff their feelings. Number 3, they need significance. They need significance and inclusion. So that's some of their emotional needs. There was something else I wanted to get to before we need to stop here tonight. Pardon me?
Was there a fourth one?
I don't think so. No, there's only three.
Keep the peace.
Yeah, just the three.
I'm like, okay.
See, the phlegmatic part of you needed the fourth one. If you give it, here's a way to drive phlegmatics nuts. Give them a fill-in sheet in your sermon, and don't fill in two of the spots. They will come to you after the service and ask what those answers were going to, what those fill-ins were. They can't go home without doing it.
Not the phlegmatic.
No, the melancholy. Not the phlegmatic. They wasn't even sure they forgot they had one. Okay, let's see. On page, we're not going to read it, but on page 156 and 157, here's a marital balance chart. It tells, what their each personality's assets are in marriage and their liabilities. Like the sanguine buys two of everything. Let's see here. I'm looking for, what am I looking for? It tells you what happens when phlegmatics marry phlegmatics, etc. I'm looking for something here. It's right at the end, I think. Okay, yeah. This is the last thing we're going to do tonight. It's on page 194 is where it starts. How to deal with depression in the different personalities. Like sanguine depression. What to do with the depressed sanguine. Give them poor babies and be sorry. Give them gifts and cards. Take them out for lunch and call more often. Compliment them. Let them talk it out and cry. Give them sincere hope that life will get better. But you do not want to. Here's what you avoid with a depressed sanguine. Don't lecture them about their feelings or their failings with sayings like, if you'd only listened to me in the first place, you wouldn't be in this mess. See, these are the things I wish I'd have known raising my kids. Don't compare them with people worse off. They don't want to. There's nobody worse off than they are, Don't give guilt trips. And then melancholy depression. What to do with the depressed melancholy? Say things like, I don't blame you. Sit quietly until they want to talk. Discuss possible solutions. Admit that life is not fair. Get into the pit with them and commiserate. But do not, this is what you avoid with a depressed melancholy. Don't say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Or look at the bright side of life. They don't want to look at the bright side of life. Don't trivialize their grief and depression. Don't insist they cheer up today. Don't give up on them because that's what they expect that you're going to do. They expect you're going to give up on them. What to do with the depressed choleric? What to do with the depressed choleric? Encourage them with a hope of victory. Tell them, you can do it. Why? Because that's their terminology. Yeah, I can do this thing. Say you're the smartest person I know and help them come up with practical steps. But here's what you avoid with a depressed choleric. Don't give out pity. It brings more depression to a choleric. Don't tell them God was just trying to get their attention. They'll take God on. Well, if that's the way God is, Don't tell them the depression is caused by too much work and they should try to take it easy or go on a vacation. That depresses them more. Then phlegmatic depression. What to do with the depressed phlegmatic? Agree with their assessment. Life isn't fair. You've been a good person. You don't deserve this. Tell them you'll help them. We'll come up with some solution because they don't know how to help themselves. But what to avoid with a depressed phlegmatic? Don't give choleric demands like get up, face it, cheer up, suck it up. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Don't review your own problems and how you controlled them. Superman stories will only make the phlegmatic feel overwhelmed by what it will take to overcome the problem. And don't ridicule them. Saying things to your kids about your spouse like, your father's a wreck again, just ignore him, will only make your spouse more depressed. Well, that's a very quick overview. But if you haven't already, you need to read that book, and you need to be starting on the other one. I know we're behind, but we do have a week off for Easter, so that will help as well. And hope you learned something tonight. Nothing else, I hope you can laugh about some of this stuff, except for you poor melancholies that can't laugh. Yeah, you can, but you got some sanguine in you, a little
I've been
bit,
trying to figure that out.
a little bit. You know, not a whole lot, but a little bit. You know, I think.
I kind of saw that on the list, and I was wondering that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to call it a night for this class. God bless you.